Now it is the peculiar honour of Europe, since it has been Christian, that while it has had aristocracy, it has always at the back of its heart treated aristocracy as a weakness, generally as a weakness that must be allowed for. If any one wishes to appreciate this point, let him go outside Christianity into some other philosophical atmosphere. Let him, for instance, compare the classes of Europe with the castes of India. There aristocracy is far more awful, because it is far more intellectual. It is seriously felt that the scale of classes is a scale of spiritual values, that the baker is better than the butcher in an invisible and sacred sense. But no Christianity, not even the most ignorant or perverse, ever suggested that a baronet was better than a butcher in that sacred sense. No Christianity, however ignorant or extravagant, ever suggested that a duke would not be damned. In pagan society there may have been (I do not know) some such serious division between the free man and the slave. But in Christian society we have always thought the gentleman a sort of a joke, though I admit that in some great crusades and councils he earned the right to be called a practical joke. But we in Europe never really, and at the root of our souls, took aristocracy seriously. It is only an occasional non-European alien, such as Dr. Oscar Levy, the only intelligent Nietzscheite, who can even manage for a moment to take aristocracy seriously. It may be a mere patriotic bias, though I do not think so, but it seems to me that the English aristocracy is not only the type, but is the crown and flower of all actual aristocracies. It has all the oligarchical virtues, as well as all the defects. It is casual, it is kind, it is courageous in obvious matters, but it has one great merit that overlaps even these. The great and very obvious merit of the English aristocracy is that nobody could possibly take it seriously. In short, I had spelled out slowly, as usual, the need for an equal law in Utopia; and as usual I found that Christianity had been there before me. The whole history of my Utopia has the same amusing sadness. I was always rushing out of my architectural study with plans for a new turret, only to find it sitting up there in the sunlight, shining and 1,000 years old. For me, in the ancient and partly in the modern sense, God answered the prayer, "Prevent us, O Lord, in all our doings." Without vanity, I really think there was a moment when I could have invented the marriage vow, as an institution, out of my own head. But I discovered with a sigh that it had been invented already. But since it would be too long a business to show how, fact by fact and inch by inch, my own conception of Utopia was only answered by the New Jerusalem, I will take this one case of the matter of marriage as indicating the converging drift, I may say the converging crash, of all the rest. When the ordinary opponents of Socialism talk about impossibilities and alterations in human nature, they always miss an important distinction. In modern ideal conceptions of society there are some desires that are possibly not attainable. But there are some desires that are not desirable. That all men should live in equally beautiful houses is a dream that may or may not be attained. But that all men should live in the same beautiful house is not a dream at all; it's a nightmare. That a man should love all old women is an ideal that may not be attainable. But that a man should regard all old women exactly as he regards his mother is not only an unattainable ideal, but an ideal which ought not to be attained. I do not know if the reader agrees with me in these examples, but I will add the example which has always affected me most. I could never conceive or tolerate any Utopia which did not leave to me the liberty for which I chiefly care, the liberty to bind myself. Complete anarchy would not merely make it impossible to have any discipline or fidelity, it would also make it impossible to have any fun. To take an obvious instance, it would not be worth while to bet if a bet were not binding. The dissolution of all contracts would not only ruin morality, but spoil sport. Now betting and such sports are only the stunted and twisted shapes of the original instinct of man for adventure and romance, of which much has been said in these pages. And the perils, rewards, punishments, and fulfilments of an adventure must be real, or the adventure is only a shifting and heartless nightmare. If I bet, I must be made to pay, or there is no poetry in betting. If I challenge, I must be made to fight, or there is no poetry in challenging. If I vow to be faithful, I must be cursed when I am unfaithful, or there is no fun in vowing. You could not even make a fairy tale from the experiences of a man who, when he was swallowed by a whale, might find himself at the top of the Eiffel Tower, or when he turned into a frog might begin to behave like a flamingo. For the purpose even of the wildest romance, results must be real, results must be irrevocable. Christian marriage is the great example of a real and irrevocable result, and that is why it is the chief subject and centre of all our romantic writing. And this is my last instance of the things that I should ask, and ask imperatively, of any social paradise. I should ask to be kept to my bargain, to have my oaths and engagements taken seriously. I should ask Utopia to avenge my honour on myself. All my modern Utopian friends look at each other rather doubtfully, for their ultimate hope is the dissolution of all special ties. But again I seem to hear, like a kind of echo, an answer from beyond the world. You will have real obligations, and therefore real adventures, when you get to my Utopia, but the hardest obligation and the steepest adventure is to get there. End of chapter 7, part 2.